IDS 3013, Diversity, Equity, and Social Science. School Policy Project. Discrimination Against Women. Price Waterhouse v. Hopkins. Presented by Morgan Butler, Grace Goddard, Amber McGinnis, Amy Mendez, Rebecca Miranda, and Hannah Morrison. Ann Hopkins was a senior manager at the accounting firm of Price Waterhouse. Over the course of 5 years, Ann Hopkins brought in over $40 million to the firm, and she was proposed partnership. However, her partnership candidacy was placed on hold. 1 year passed, and Ann Hopkins was still not denied, but not offered partnership. She ultimately realized her dream of being a partner at Price Waterhouse would not come to fruition. What she did was file a lawsuit for sex discrimination against Price Waterhouse, covered under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination by employers on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Ann Hopkins used her employee evaluations from Price Waterhouse as evidence in her lawsuit. Some of the partners were stated as saying she could use a course in charm school. She could perhaps improve her femininity to improve her chances of partnership. She was too masculine. There were 662 employees at Price Waterhouse. 7 of them were women, including Ann Hopkins. So based on some of these evaluations that she received from the male partners, they're from that perspective that, quote, there are innate differences between the sexes that in turn shape sex differences in social behaviors. This idea follows from the functionalist analysis of sex, which casts women and men as serving different and complementary roles in society. Ferguson, 2013. The outcome of the suit was ultimately decided in Ann Hopkins' favor, and the Supreme Court did uphold both the district and federal court appeals decision in finding that Price Waterhouse did illegally discriminate against Ann Hopkins. So there were 2 major outcomes set forth from this landmark case. First, the case established gender stereotyping as an actionable offense on the basis of sexual discrimination, ergo, a violation of Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Second, a mixed motive evidentiary framework may be used in proving discrimination claims using disparate treatment theory where the employer's actions exist for other potentially legitimate reasons. And basically what that means is there could be other either illegitimate or legitimate reasons that the employer took the actions that they did. So in this case, they were saying that there were other potential reasons that they denied partnership or did not offer a partnership to Ann Hopkins. It was based on her performance, meaning her interactions with others, or her abrasiveness, or the evaluations that came back negatively regarding her. So that's what they're trying to say with the mixed motive framework. So ultimately, Ann Hopkins sued Price Waterhouse for violating her civil rights, right? She accomplished what she set out to do. And in fact, she was discriminated against based on her sex and denied a promotion to partner. So, the disparaging remarks made by her partners regarding her masculinity or her abrasiveness or her appearance and demeanor were in direct contrast to that of what the partners thought they ought to have been. In essence, she was an outsider of both the feminine group and not a member of the male group. And Ferguson states, outsiders lack both the elements provided by group members and the obligations attached to belonging. There were some board members that also felt that women could not be taken seriously in management positions, no matter what qualifications they had. Dr. Susan Fisk, who was an associate professor of psychology at Carnegie Mellon University, testified at the trial that the comments and decisions made at Price Waterhouse were most likely influenced by sex stereotyping. Ferguson also says a person's gender identity may or may not correspond with the person's sex or gender. Also, why certain behaviors are not rewarded by boys but punished when girls perform them. Why all sorts of behaviors girls are encouraged to perform are often valued less than the sorts of behaviors boys are encouraged to form. Some of the comments made by the male employees that portrayed some of Hopkins' behaviors and characteristics were given in a negative connotation, right? So saying that she was macho and masculine, when some of those same qualities might be portrayed as positive or go unnoticed if Hopkins were not a male. Discrimination has long been a barrier to equity and diversity in schools and communities. But we as a society have been chipping away at that barrier for the past 26 years since this case was decided. These barriers prevent most women from achieving the same pay grade as men in their profession. They also discourage girls from entering fields of study predominantly pursued by men, and Hopkins held an impressive resume, including her 2 year effort securing a multi-million dollar contract with the Department of State. And even though her record was incomparable to those other candidates against her, she was still denied partnership because she was a woman. This has great implications on the workplace in today's society and definite implications on our communities. In society, particularly in the workforce, gender is constituted simultaneously through deployment of gendered rhetoric, symbols, and images, and through allocations of resources and power along gender lines. Ferguson, 2013. If Ann Hopkins had been a man with the same resume, she would have undoubtedly been promoted to partner without second thoughts. There was no question that this type of gender discrimination still takes place in the workplace today. Even on many occasions, Hopkins demonstrated very harsh, overly aggressive attitude with staff. After hearing these complaints by fellow staff members, Thomas Bear heard the supervisor of her department told Hopkins that she was advised to walk more femininely, talk more femininely, and dress more femininely, even advised to wear makeup, have her hair styled, and wear jewelry. This kind of criticism from a man in the workplace supports the idea that male privilege in the workplace goes unnoticed and unchallenged. Only rarely will a man go beyond acknowledging that women are advantaged to acknowledging that men have unearned advantage, or that privilege systems might even ever be changed or challenged. Macintosh. Ann Hopkins hit a glass ceiling in her workplace and it needed to be shattered. And shatter she did. Although this course case did not specifically address the issue of racism, it is indirectly affected because oppression is taking place in some form, and when oppression is taking place, all areas of oppression and dominance are affected. Although this case does not specifically address the issue of racism, it is indirectly affected because oppression is taking place in some form. And when oppression is taking place, all areas of oppression and dominance are affected. Our group made several connections to the issues of gender equality and race equality based on Lord's 1982 article, There Is No Hierarchy of Oppressions. This connection is critical because race and gender go hand in hand when discussing inequalities. The issue of race connects to Hopkins' case because she was not only fighting against her gender inequality, but she was instead making a stand for all inequality and discrimination. Because there was oppression based on gender, there was also oppression rooted in racism. Because, as Lord states, I know I cannot afford the luxury of fighting one form of oppression only, and I cannot afford to choose between the fronts upon which I must battle these forces of discrimination. Lord, 1983. When fighting one form of oppression, such as gender oppression, that takes place throughout this case, society should not overlook or disregard another form of oppression. They are all equal and should be tackled with an important amount of intensity and discussed regardless of the situation. Lord resolves that both arise from the same source as racism, a belief in the inherent superiority of one race over all others, and thereby its right to dominance. The double standard that presents itself in society today should be unacceptable and intolerable. yet it's prevalent in society and therefore prevalent in businesses, culture, and religion. In Ferguson text, she states, all institutions in the contemporary United States are organized and permeated by race and gender. Ferguson, the structures created by society in which race and gender are important are ones that seek to enforce dominance on groups of people that are viewed as unequal and undeserving. The issues of race was evident in Reservation Blues written by Alexis Sherman because the Native Americans were discriminated against because of their race and when they were outside of their own reservation. It happens in all areas of society, regardless of race and location. There have been efforts to create more gender equality for a long time. The original draft of the Equal Rights Amendment wanted men and women to have equal rights in the United States and all areas under its jurisdiction. However, on March 27th in 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment was sent to the states for ratification. When the deadline expired, only 35 of the 38 required states had ratified it, falling short of the constitutionally required three-fourths. The Equal Rights Amendment is still not included in the Constitution. As we look at the impact this court case has had on issues of race, gender, sexuality, and class, we realize the impact it has on schools and communities today. As future educators, we need to teach our students in a way that promotes diversity and equity. As Ferguson teaches us, we ourselves need to unlearn what society has taught us about these issues so that we can impact the way our students think. It first starts with us. We need to be advocates for equity so that we can impact the future of our society.